Hi, everybody, and welcome. If you remember, we had a recording a while back with Scott Lindstrom and Freddie Mendoza. And so today I have Scott back here because I really wanted to have a conversation with him about grief. When I first went to the CTI, to the Certification Training Intensive with a Nurtured Heart approach, he was at that time one of the peer leaders, huge role model for me in a bajillion ways. But we'll talk about that another time. And he presented there a little bit of some of what he had gone through around grief. What was so meaningful to me about it is that there's a piece of Nurtured Heart that can come across so positive, almost toxically positive, where no matter what, we're finding what's good, and no matter what, we're finding how to appreciate and be grateful. And that can be beautiful, or it can be toxic in the way that it could be denying the reality that we're living in. And what I found through diving deeper into Nurtured Heart is that the true nature of Nurtured Heart is to be so insanely real about what is in the moment. And it's not about good or bad. It's about what really, really is, and allowing what is to be purposeful to me and to my life and to my journey and to who I become. And that was something that I saw in Scott in the way that he presented about grief. So Scott, if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, thanks. First of all, I want to say that it's when you call somebody a role model, that always stirs that little discomfort. But I'll say back at you that you are an inspiration to me as well. So it's and maybe maybe that's just something we can all be to each other. Um, Hopefully, there's probably an inspiration every human walking this planet, right? So thanks for that, and back at you. Um, So yeah, I'm a school psychologist by training. Have done that for 35 or 40 years, something on that range. Retired quickly and came back to work with the Camp Fire, the infamous fire that burned down the town of Paradise, um, which is just a few minutes from where I live. I live in Chico, California, which is north of Sacramento, north of San Francisco. And in 2018, November, we had a huge fire that burned over 13,000 homes, burned multiple schools, impacted a town of about 30,000 people or so. Um, Lots and lots of people were left without their homes. And I, as a school psychologist, had retired but came back to work to coordinate the student mental health supports in the schools um, following the campfire, and spent a lot of time talking with staff, some time talking with kids, mostly with staff and with the counselors that were supporting the staff. So I've spent a lot of that, and that was in part, I think, was coloring the conversations I've had since then about life, about grief, about what it means to be with somebody in their pain. Um, so that's been a really important part of my life in a way that I would not have predicted. Um, and prior to that, I was 30 years at my local school district as a school psychologist and building student support programs. More importantly, I'm a father of three daughters. I'm married to my second wife for 23 years, and I have two grandkids who are just sources of great joy to my life. So those are the things that I think probably most of us who enter a conversation like this really think about as the most important part of life is our families, our people, but also not to diminish at all what friendships mean and the quality. I think for me, the quality of relationships is what really determines the quality of life for most of us. Um, so that said, yeah, we talked about grief. There's a thing about grief that when I think about the nurtured heart approach, I think it's something that's been masterfully put together to create a framework or a construct from which we can work, um, and that we can use to, as you said, really kind of frame how you greet life, how you greet various energies, whether it's joy or loss or pain or sorrow or anger, whatever it might be, but a lot of it being in that framework of grief. And for me, Nurtured Heart, a lot of what's in it is stuff we were doing already. We were understanding, we were experiencing already, but it's been put together in a framework that helps us say, I need to interpret this moment through the nurtured heart lens. When I do that, I start thinking, well, one of the things I need to do when I look through that lens is to consider the three stands of the nurtured heart approach. Absolutely no, absolutely yes, absolutely clear. So that gives me a framework where I can start thinking and intentionally, again, as you said, purposefully, um, decide how I'm going to respond to the situation I'm in right now. Um, so I really like that framework that the nurtured heart approach gives us. And in part, it's just like when we do counseling and therapy, a lot of times it's a matter of getting to that point where you go, sometimes it's like, what would my counselor say right now? And it's like, it just gives you that way to pause and frame things in a way that allows you to be purposeful and intentional, and in part to not waste what's there. Spinning our wheels in negativity, not waste that energy, whatever the emotions, whatever they may be, but actually to use them. So, nurtured heart approach to me gives me a framework from which I can work, and part of that framework is also, as I know you hit all the time, is not energizing what's negative, including the negative in my own thoughts and negative in my thoughts about myself and others, and not energize or and giving lots of energy to seeking and seeing and knowing what's awesome in the moment. Um, and for me, it also allows me to go, you know what? I'm not ready to go there right now, but I do know because I have practiced this approach long enough to know that I'll get there. And when I do, then I will be able to purposefully use all the energy, all the emotions, all the whatever is going on in a way that grows wisdom, that grows meaningful life experience, and maybe hopefully grows relationship. So I see nurtured heart and grief kind of similarly in that way because grief is also another construct, which we all experience all of the pain and emotions and anger and sorrow and sense of being lost and all that happens in grief. But when we know that we can say, "Oh, that's my grief right now. It's happening," it gives us a way of kind of being purposeful in how we manage that. The other beautiful thing it does is that when I'm with somebody who's grieving, I can consider where they are in their process. I can know when I walk into a room full of teachers who all lost their homes that every one of them is experiencing grief in some way or another. That not only that every one of them has some shared experience of that, and each one is unique in where they probably are in this exact moment right now. So there's a beauty to that when we can say, yes, here's the construct, and that allows me then to kind of purposefully, intentionally um, notice where I am with that, notice where they are with that, and be more present in that, I think. And I think one thing you and I have talked about is that being with somebody in their grieving process is it's really an honor. It's um, it's powerful. Um, it's intimacy, um, and the more we're capable of just being present in it, being with somebody, being where they are, the more intimate that can be and the more helpful I think that can be too. Um, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. If I could ask you to reflect on what you just said about being there with them, and that honor and just sharing that space. Sometimes we know with nurtured heart we say like say rules in the no because sometimes the no is just more clear than the yes. What would that not look like? Just being with someone is an experience and an openness that if I don't know what that is, how do I know what that is? Like I wonder if you could just talk about what that doesn't look like for a
That's,
minute.
I love that how you frame that question. That's great. Um, I like that because that's a different way of applying that, how you do rules. What does it not look like? I don't think it's black and white. I think sometimes we speak to what you do and what you don't. But I guess I feel like what it doesn't look like, or what a typical caution would be, not feeling like you have to fix it. A typical caution would be um, not bringing your own stuff. If you're in a moment where you're trying to be supportive of somebody else's grief, is to not make it about yourself in that moment. So um, if somebody just lost their mother, maybe not the first thing to do would be to say, "Oh yeah, I lost my mom too." It would be more to just be present. So what is your feeling? Because in part because their feeling of losing their mom is going to be somewhat similar, but not entirely similar to yours. And you don't know where they're going to be in their process of that too. Not that that doesn't bring a form of wisdom and empathy that you've also lost your mom and can feel that and can relate to that, but just the caution. And I think, we talk a lot about in the nurtured heart approach about that idea of having congruent words and feelings and energies. And I think it's partly that. It's that um, being attuned energetically, being able to be really present with it. I think being okay with that people hurt and that's normal. And I think there probably is some wisdom in knowing that this pain is really, really important. Um, and maybe there's some comfort in me knowing that what I know from my experience and from the science around grieving is that grief as a shared experience is the healing process. That is how we heal, is by sharing it, by being with other people in it, um, by being able to tell our stories and such. So, um, and then the flip side or attached to that is the knowing that if you're crying because your teacher died in a car accident last week, um, what you're crying about also is an experience of love, of caring, of connectedness, of relationship that you've lost and that has changed. Maybe it's not entirely lost, but it's at least changed. Um, so the flip side of grief is always some sort of love and relationship and appreciation. Um, so I guess the don't is probably don't try to fix it, don't try to move too quickly out of it. Let people be where they are. Um, and then I don't know. To me, it's to feel the appreciation of the privilege of being present with them wherever they are. Um, sometimes, like a lot of times with teens, there's that energetic presence, but there's also the need to give them the space to do it the way they need to do it. And often that's with their peers. Sometimes it's with the older folks like us too, but sometimes what they need is the energetic safety that we can provide without being in their faces with it, so that they can then have that energetic safe space to be with their peers in that. Um, I don't know. Does that make any sense?
That was amazing. There's so much wisdom there. Thank you. And um, there's two things that you said that stuck out specifically. Everything stuck out specifically, but two things that to talk about a little more is you said about how to know that it's okay, that they're in pain and that the pain is important. Um, and that kind of bleeds into all the things you were saying. Um, but that not needing to fix it or not wanting to fix it, if I can really be okay with that grief is real and that it's a process that needs to happen, then I can really allow it to happen because I believe it needs to. If I'm washing, if I'm doing If I'm running my washing machine, regardless of how badly I need the shirt, I need to wait for the cycle to end. I can't take this soapy sudsy shirt out in the middle just because I want it. Like, well, I want to feel better, or I want you to feel better. I don't want to be here any longer. It hurts. It's painful. I just want to be happy. Well, you're in the mid cycle of grief. You got to wait for the cycle to end. Wait for the bing, it'll happen eventually. And it needs to happen. But then even to take it the next level, I think nurtured heart, there's the stand one of it's not negative, but the stand two of wait, what's the beauty there is that other piece you said about how actually the grief is a reflection of the love. The grief is a reflection of the care, of the connection, of the beauty that was. If it wasn't beautiful, there wouldn't be grief. If there wasn't a connection, if there wasn't a loss of something good. And so the almost the magnitude of the sadness, the magnitude of the grief is an equal reflection of the magnitude of the beauty. And that deserves to be honored. It deserves to be honored. This was a life. This was a house, a lifelong, building brick by brick, like cent by cent sometimes, to build up to a home, to a family, to a life. I mean, whatever the grief is, whatever the loss is, there was something there that this is going through the grieving process till it bings, till the end is honoring the beauty and yeah, giving the beauty what it deserves. And this piece that you're talking about is what I heard from you at the CTI. And it was so important for me to hear. It was in the context of the reset. We were learning about the reset where sometimes things are going awry and maybe a kid is breaking the rules or maybe we're not feeling our best, and that the reset is taking the time to do what needs to be done or be what needs to be, and so we can get back to greatness. The idea is always to get back to greatness. But that piece of like, yeah, stand one and stand two is I'm not going to let the negativity spin and take over my life and just, delve in it. I want to find the beauty. I want to find the meaning. I want to find the purpose and I want to grow from it. That's the stand two and my greatness in it and appreciation. But the clarity piece, the stand three is where the reset is that, and I'm not ready yet. And
Yeah.
I need to be here right now. I'm not ready yet. And honoring that I'm not ready yet is that clarity. And that's the words you said, I think, at the CTI were sometimes the reset is 1 minute and sometimes the reset takes years and we're just not ready yet. And for that to be okay in itself is an application of the stands. It's not negative to not be ready. It's positive to respect and honor the process.
Mm-hmm.
And the clarity of when it's over will come if I'm with it, because I will feel it. I will feel the shift and I will know. And it's not all or nothing and overnight. It's a process, and there's pieces of me that will come back to myself, and there's pieces of me that will be ready to move on. And then there'll be moments and times and parts of me that aren't ready. So I just love everything you're saying.
That's
And
so
I
true.
don't have a question, but what are your reflections on that?
I love that. Yeah. Man, I was starting to write notes because there's so many thoughts being triggered now. Um, yeah, that not being ready. I think one of the things that's really helpful to me about having been in a nurtured heart practice for a long time now is that I trust that process. That I know sometimes I'm not the nicest guy. Sometimes I have feelings and emotions that are not that I know are not going to serve me well, and yet there they are. And sometimes I can say, "Oh, there's that anger. I gotcha." Okay. And sometimes it's like, "Yeah, I see you there. I know that I'm going to need to deal with, but I'm not there right now." But trusting that I will get there, not beating myself up because I'm not there right now, has been really, really helpful, because I know that if I don't beat myself up, there's a greater likelihood I'm going to be able to process this in a healthy manner later. When I was dealing with the fire, um, people who lost their homes in the fires, one of the things that I heard a number of times was people who, right after a natural disaster, you often see that hashtag. For us, it was Butte Strong or Ridge Strong. Paradise is up on the ridge above us. Um, there's this hashtag strong that comes out. Like, yeah, we're going to be strong, we're going to recover, right? And it's great and it's important and it's a part of the process. And also for some people, it was just so daunting. It's like they felt like they had to hide. I literally saying, I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm supposed to feel strong, and I don't feel strong. And I think that's really important to be able to have that space, whether it's in the grieving process or trauma or whatever it is, to be okay with not feeling strong in that moment. Um, and then knowing that we'll get there. The likelihood is we'll get there. The likelihood is that after a particular loss, typically within about a year, we've done a lot of the mourning or grieving work that we need to do. um, but I also think that what you triggered in me is that notion that, man, grieving is a moment by moment process. We don't always have to frame it that way, but you've got kids, you're watching those kids grow up every day. Every day you've lost the kid they were the day before. Every single day. Every single day there's probably a dream that you might have had somewhere in the back of your mind. Sometimes we try not to impose our dreams on our kids, but it's human nature. It's hard not to. Every day there's a dream you might have had to let go of. Every day there's an interaction that happened that doesn't feel good. And so for all those, I think all that kind of stuff can be framed in the grieving process. And yeah, it's hard to let go of that stuff. And um, and the flip side is isn't it beautiful that that matters? Isn't it beautiful that I have a dream for my kid? Isn't it beautiful that I even have a kid to dream about? Um, so to me, the grieving process is a way of framing a lot of life's daily activities. Losing your keys. I mean, you kind of quickly go through all your grieving stages when you lose your keys, right? There's the denial, the anger, the bargaining. Come on, come on, show them to me, please. I'll donate another $10 to that charity, whatever. So there's all that. The grieving process really comes into play all the time. And again, for me, it's helpful when I can reference a construct like that in my thought processes that helps me understand what I'm going through and maybe helps me be more purposeful in terms of how I handle it.
Wow, this was so powerful, like so perfect. I think we're gonna close here pretty much. I feel like, Scott, I could talk to you forever. Just your grace and your like your gentle strength of of like so being. I don't know. It's you're really a beautiful person, and I'm so blessed to know you. And this conversation is a gift. So thank you for sharing. I'd love to maybe explore grief even more at another juncture. But really, my takeaway for today is grief is not a grief is a process, and being with it is much more important than managing, fixing, or healing it, because it kind of has its own life, and it's okay to trust it,
Mm.
and it's okay to let it run its course.
Yeah, it's there for a reason. It's not an accident.
And we're meant to do it together also. I heard
I
you
think
say
that's
that. And
really, really important. Mhm.
sharing our story and having each other. So if this, if you're grieving right now, whoever's listening to this is me and Scott sending you a hug, and find your people, reach out, because yeah,
Yeah, be where you
it's okay
are.
to be where you are.
Want to let it work for you. And
Yeah.
yeah, when it works in relationship, it's even more beautiful. So thank you too, Mussi. Thank you very much for the time and for the energy you put into our world, because you're putting it out there. You're making this place more connected. You're helping people see the brilliance in who they are, um, and presenting the brilliance of yourself. So thanks for sharing your bright light with me this morning.
Oh, you're welcome, Scott. That's so meaningful. I am.